All right. So my first question, Emily, is I thought we would start out with if you could tell us just a brief, from your perspective, what Brees Bake Off is about. And then I would like to go back in time a little bit more on your filmmaking journey.
Of course.
So,
Yes. So Bree's Bake Off Challenge is about a 12-year-old girl who wants to be a baker. And she hears of the Spring Bake Off Challenge happening at her school, and she does everything she can to win first place. So that's Bree. And, there's a bunch of challenges that she faces, but with the right support system, good things can happen.
yeah. Yeah, I watched it on HBO Max the other day. I thought it was definitely well done. I was surprised at how often I laughed.
Oh, thank
Like,
you.
just the characters are just hilarious. I think one of my favorites was like the art teacher.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
hilarious.
he was so funny.
Thank you so much for saying that, seriously.
Yeah, no, and I'm a writer. I didn't tell you a lot about myself, but I'm a writer director as well. It's actually funny because our story is like very similar. I think we're actually around the same age.
Mhm.
And I just did my first feature last year as far as the production part.
Amazing.
And so it's funny because it's like the dialogue, like everything that you stress about as a writer director, it just all came together. So
Oh my gosh,
congrats
thank
to
you
you.
so much. Thank you seriously so much for saying that. The writing took a
Yeah.
bit. I definitely went through the process of getting a lot of feedback and making sure that I felt really good about it. And the only way that I felt like I could feel good about it is if I got feedback from a bunch of people. So that was something that, is nerve-wracking as a writer, but it paid off. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, and speaking of that, I was wondering if we could go back in time a little bit
Yeah.
to kind of talk about, because I know you went to film school, and I know, if I'm not mistaken, you live in LA now, correct?
hmm
Okay, so I was wondering if we could go back a little before that, though, of like what led you to this industry and just loving film, storytelling. What's that been like for you?
Yeah, so this whole film industry really started when I was 16. And it wasn't necessarily film, but I got into theater in high school. So I started
Okay.
acting. And one day one of my friends was like, "Hey, do you want to do this acting workshop? It's an 8-hour intensive and the teacher is really good, and by the end of it you're going to perform whatever you learned in front of your friends and family." And I was like, "Whoa, that sounds really intense. Let's do it." So I do it. It is actually a really intense day, and by the end of it I performed. And everyone was really happy, and, we thanked the teacher and everything. And this is the thing that kind of, I don't know, I think it honestly changed my life this day. We were about to head out, and my mom was like, "Hey, you need to go thank your teacher, like, again." And I was like, "Nah, I already did. I'm good. Let's go. I'm tired." And I'm 16. And she's like, "No, I want to talk to him. Like, he did a really amazing job." And so she literally basically forces me to go say hi to him again. I'm like, "Oh, I'm so tired." Yeah, I go up to him and he was like, "Hey, I'm really impressed with you and your work today. Do you plan on pursuing acting? Seriously?" And I was like, "No, I don't." But thank you. And then he was like, "Well, maybe you should consider it." And so literally from that day, I met up with him later with my mom and my sister at the time. And he was like, "LA or New York, pick one. You need to pursue it." And I honestly never thought about film or anything. I was probably going to go into business like the rest of my family. And no, he completely helped and pushed me to go into the industry. So from 16, at 18, I picked LA and I moved to LA by myself. And being the youngest of four, it was really difficult because I'm a really big family girl. And so everyone was really supportive. And they all came and basically dropped me off. And it was just, yeah, it was like, this is the decision I made. And I decided to pursue acting and got the agent and everything. And turns out I don't like being told what to do. And so I went from acting to producing. The advice given was produce your own content so that you can act in it. So from 18 to 20 years old, I was doing that. And it turns out, too, that I actually am really organized and I like putting the pieces of the puzzle together. Like, basically it's a big old puzzle of filmmaking journey. And it was just awesome. And then, yeah, basically I went to film school and they were like, you need to direct. And I was like, no, I don't know how to direct. And they basically were, it's part of the curriculum. And I did it and I absolutely fell in love with the whole process. And for that short film, my first short film, I'll say it's called Reminiscence. And I wrote and directed and produced it. But the whole writing and directing journey was absolutely amazing because everything that I wrote and saw came to life. And, you know, like that's one of the most amazing things that I think can happen. And, you know, filmmakers like have that feeling. So,
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. So I'm curious, in film school, was it like a complete curriculum where were you learning writing specifically, or was it just a whole like program?
so there's two different things that I need to add. I went to Santa Monica College for the first 2 years, which is so nice. It's such a great school. And then there I took film classes and then on top of your general stuff. And then I got into film school and I transferred my junior and senior year to Loyola Marymount University, the film school there. And so with film school, they make you take everything, actually. There's two stages. The first stage, you do general things in film just to make sure that you know various aspects of film and make sure that you want to get into that tract. So it was intense. Like they actually make you do writing, directing, producing, production design, editing courses. They make you do all of that. So I learned all of that. And then once you've taken those, then you can pick your track. And I picked directing.
Okay, cool. So it was like once you transferred, it was what, around a 2-year type program to finish up. Okay.
Yeah, to finish the 4 years.
Yeah, because it's definitely a commitment, film school or any kind of school. But I'm curious, so after, film school, I think I listened to another interview where you were saying after that you knew that you wanted to do Brees Bake Off or something like that eventually. Could you talk a little bit about the journey for those people who are new to this episode or this podcast? I know that you funded a lot of it yourself. And so I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what that was like, working, saving, however that journey unfolded for you to help executive produce it.
Absolutely, yes. So I'm the type of person who is a little impatient and I like things done a certain way. And with that, I want the ownership of my projects. So we could have easily gone to various places for Brees, actually, but we didn't choose that route. And one of the things that really was the differentiating point was honestly the ownership. Like I wanted to make sure that I did this the way that I wanted to. And so with that, it's basically, I've been freelancing ever since I graduated film school. And I basically, all the money that I got from freelance, I literally just paid my bills and then the rest of it went to a savings account for the movie, like honestly. And it's just like you just use whatever money that you have and you kind of have to go for it. And I know that it's really crazy for you to use your own money. Like that's really not said. You shouldn't invest in your own money, in your own films, especially features. Like that's one of the things that a lot of people say. And for me, it was honestly a now or never kind of deal. I didn't see a lot of studio companies at the time even hiring Latin directors, your female directors at that even. And so I was like, I need to show people what I'm made of. And how are they going to hire me if I don't even have work behind me to show that? So it's kind of one of those like weird catch-22s. And so for me, it was really important to invest in myself. And I looked at it as investing myself as a business. Like, no, I'm not just gonna like do whatever project. Like, I know there's a need for family movie content. I know that studios need that kind of content, like family specifically, more than, let's say, dramas or something with bigger actors. So I knew in a way that I was like, I think I can pull this off with what I have. And I kid you not, like just using every single resource and stretching every dollar possible to make it happen.
Hmm.
Hmm.
That's an interesting point. So I'm curious if did you then go into filmmaking Brees Bake Off with the intention, knowing that it was going to be marketable because it was a family friendly feature, or is that just what you ended up writing?
So, yes, I definitely knew that I needed to write a family comedy movie. It was something that I already wanted to do actually too, because my first movie was a Christmas movie and the second one was a horror. And so I, in a way, like those two were, my first two films were shoestring, they were experimental. And in a way, honestly, for my third movie, I wanted to do 100 times better than those first two films. Because honestly, those first two, like shoestring experimental, let's just put that in that
Hmm.
category. And I was able to sell those two, and I learned a lot. But I knew that I wanted to improve immensely. So with Breeze Bake Off Challenge, I honestly did everything that I could to make sure that the film was as high quality possible movie as possible. And so with
Hmm.
that, just a lot of planning and a lot of things involved, and then we got it made.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very inspiring story that you have because that kind of leads me to the next question, actually. I saw that you actually edited this film
Hmm.
yourself, right? And I'm curious how why you chose that. Is that something that you like a skill that you've cultivated through the years? How did that come about?
Oh yeah. So it's really funny. I actually don't talk about that a lot. But yes, good eye. I did edit the movie and all out of necessity. It saved me a lot of money for me doing it rather than, someone else, honestly. And as an indie movie, that's one of the things, the choices that I made, like, hey, I need to spend money elsewhere and I will, do the due diligence and edit it. So that was really tedious. I will say editing is not my favorite, but we got it done.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And how long did the editing process take
Oh my
for
goodness.
you?
That, honestly, the whole editing process took 2.5 years. Yeah,
Oh
it
wow.
was a while. So, a lot of variables came into play. So we finished filming in 2018, and then we were editing it and stuff. But then the pandemic happened in 2020, and we were still the editing was done by then, like the cut, the final cut, but we still needed the music, sound, and the color. So with that, the pandemic slowed things down, and we just, it was one of those things where I really didn't know if I could finish it, and we just really, really had to push. And
Hmm.
the team members in post did an absolutely amazing job with the sound, music, and color. And then once they were able to finish that, then I, as the editor, took all that stuff and layered everything properly for and prepped it for distribution. Hmm.
Cool. Yeah, because that's definitely I find that to be a very rare route for like writers directors because I don't even have the first clue. Even though I took a little bit of editing, I also went to film school so
Hmm.
for a little bit. So I mean we took classes, but there's no way that I would even attempt to edit it myself.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
yeah, it's a lot. That's a lot to take on.
it is. It
Um,
is.
But so I'm curious now. Then after you edited it, because I think you mentioned before that somewhere else that it's about like a 5 year process, right? To make this to get it to HBO Max where it is now. So I'm curious, how long was the process from finishing the editing to where we are now?
Oh yeah. So by the time the whole editing and the movie was done, it was completed. I believe it was the end of 2021. And so I'm looking at the finished timeline. It's literally complete. I'm like, oh my gosh, we did this. But that's not the finish line. We have to get distribution as filmmakers. So it was in negotiations for a whole year.
Wow.
And various companies, all that, yeah, negotiating calls, all of that stuff, nerve wracking and also exciting at the same time. But yeah, I didn't want just anyone to have it, and a lot of people wanted it, and so we really took our time with that, and we couldn't be happier with where it landed.
Yeah. No, it's definitely a great platform, great film. Um, So I'm curious, obviously you've been in this process for a while now, not just getting Brees Bake Off done, but also just in filmmaking. So from your perspective, what would be one of the hardest things that you think are challenges for young filmmakers starting out that was maybe you like 5 years ago?
Yes. So I'm going to say this. I know that money is a sensitive topic for filmmakers. It's a little different than other industries because you need money in order to make a film. And you need resources and like you literally just need things. It's not one of those things where you can just get up and do it one day and you need a plan for it. So my advice to filmmakers who are just starting out, I really want to say this because I definitely used money as an excuse. When I graduated film school, I wanted to make movies and I wanted to show people what I was capable of, but I used the money as excuse. I was like, I don't have money. And my mentor, actually, my acting teacher, from when I was 16. He's still my mentor today, actually. And he's the one who said, hey, Emily, you need to use whatever money you have and just make your freaking movie. And I literally, he really it was an intense conversation. And he was like, I don't care how much money you have. I don't care this, that. Like, you're just putting excuses up. And no, like, you need to make your movie one way or another and just start somewhere. And I really took that to heart and he put it in my brain. He's like, if you don't start now, you're never going to be, you're never going to start basically. And so literally the year, I met up with him the year that I graduated film school. And that's when I decided to take on Claire's Ultimate Christmas. And there's a reason why. I mean, if you see it, like, it's definitely different than Brees Bake Off Challenge, but there are so many variables like time, money, resources and stuff. But I would say the less resources and money that you have, I think filmmakers can still get creative and still use what they have and really plan accordingly, like prep for what you have. If you are renting an apartment for where you live, write the story in the apartment and make it a part of the character. Like, don't go writing a luxurious, like, $1 million house if you don't have one. You know what I mean? Like, little things like that really do make a difference. And when I was writing my first 2 features, I wrote the stories based on what I had because I knew that's like what am I going to do? Like, write an action movie when I don't have access to, different things like that. So I don't know if that helps, but that's kind of my spiel on it.
Yeah, definitely. And so I'm curious, are there any, besides your acting teacher, are there any other mentors or people along the way that have helped you just keep going when you were like, hey, this is too much, I'm in over my head? And how important is that to keep in touch with those kind of people?
Absolutely. So I have a lot of mentors, a lot of people that I ask for help. Even family and friends help push me forward. And I know that's another big question, like, how do you find a mentor and stuff like that? My take on mentors is like, if you meet someone and you really want their help, you should ask a specific question. Like, hey, can you help me with this one thing? And try to make it as simple as possible for them to answer, because mentors are really busy. Really busy people. They have a lot going on. And that's one of the things that happened with me. So I just asked him, I'm like, for my acting mentor, it's like, hey, can you just help me with one thing, like, in terms of like which acting school or what I should do for college, basically. And that was an easy thing for him to do. He's like, oh, here are the schools. And basically what ends up happening, and I think what ended up happening with all my mentors, honestly, just that one question led to another one question. And then another question led to another one question. And the mentors see that I'm actively doing things, that I'm actively like taking their advice and pursuing what I said I was going to do. So for filmmakers watching, like, definitely it's just one of those things where ask a simple question, but also stay in contact once you do what they said for you to do. So take their advice. Because I know a lot of people actually don't take people's advice. I'm like, you should really take their advice because they know what they're talking about. And then other mentors in general too, I'll just mention that over the years, you know, for filmmakers, you can't be, and even creatives, even if you're not a filmmaker, for this kind of industry, you have to ask for help and you have to be open to people's advice. It's a collaborative effort. And so the more that you do things, the more that you work in the industry, the more people see you doing that. And honestly, the more that people want to help you. And like, hey, I want to help you get to the next level. If they see you actively doing it and wanting to do it. And I think that's a big difference. And I'll just say one other thing for mentors, because I know that's a big thing for listeners. I don't think that people need to get, you know, super annoying when it comes to updating them constantly. I've seen articles and I've heard people say, oh, I email my mentor every 2 weeks or at least once a month. Like, that's actually not the case for me, at least. Like, by all means, do what works for you. But for me, I definitely, like, there will be months where I don't reach out to my mentors. I actually hadn't talked to my mentor in like a year because I was so busy working on the advice he had given me. And then it wasn't until I was like, okay, I did this and I did this. I think I can tell him or them or whoever it is. I think I can talk to them. And then I think I need help. And then you kind of go about it that way. So sorry, long answer, but
Yeah, no, that's definitely helpful. So there was just one question that's kind of interesting. Just, I guess, it's the filmmaking process and storytelling as a whole. I heard on a different interview that you said a film is like just an event and you end up filming it. And so I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about that side of your perspective of what making a film really is.
Yes. So I'll talk about the stages of filmmaking and how they're really similar to the event. And that way, I mean, you really need to plan a certain day and time for people to meet at a location, let's say a party, as the event. So at the party, you need, you know, it's going to be a certain amount of hours. You need food to feed all these people. You need to invite them, and everything needs to be safe. And then basically, honestly, the difference is just you with the whole cameras. You add the cameras, and then there's actually things for everyone to do. So I say that because I actually used to do events a lot. And they are really similar. And with that, it's really, I kid you not, if you plan for what you have and like what you expect, then you can make it happen. And so with filmmaking, I mean, we have the script and there's definitely more variables involved, but the planning is really similar.
And that came from the events part of it. Didn't you say that somebody in your family owns like an events planning company or something like that?
Yeah, so I come from a family of entrepreneurs, and my sister and her husband have the largest bachata festival in DC. It's called DCBX. And so
Wow.
I actually, since I was 16, I would shadow my sister and be her little mini-me. Actually, that's what they'd call me, mini-me for her. Her name is Kat, and she, and I really learned a lot of organizational things like spreadsheets and lists and all of that stuff. I really learned. And honestly, that is truly what helped me when I was acting and I was like, oh, I need to produce my own content to act. I got my skills from these events and I was like, oh, it's just that. We just have to, plan this event and like get all the pieces and logistics in place. And I think the communication factor also, when I was helping my sister with events, it's all about communicating with everybody and everybody just like talk about your expectations and what's happening, what you're going to do. And so that truly helped. And yeah.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see how our family upbringing goes into our careers a lot of the time. And so I'm curious, was your family on set at all? Did they help you during the filmmaking process?
Oh, yes. Obviously, they just, this isn't obvious, but I was just like, they love being on set. And it's really funny because when I was in film school and all that stuff, like they never understood what I was doing. Like with my short films and the jobs that I was doing, they're like, oh, you're on set, da da da. But with Brees Bake Off Challenge, I filmed in Virginia and they were on set and they're like, oh my gosh, this is so cool, da da da. And it was really funny though, because I told them ahead of time, I'm like, hey, you can help me. I gave some of them various jobs that they could do. And it was really funny though, because they were like, oh, what? You have to be there for 12 hours? And you have, and
So,
it's,
yeah.
and it's this, and you have to do this and that. And I was like, yeah, this is what film set is. And then they're like, oh my gosh, okay. And like they did it, like they were also helpful here and there for various things, but it was just really funny because I'm like, what do you think I've been doing this whole time?
Right.
So,
Yeah, exactly.
so yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy on set. I had that my own experience last year doing that. But so I have two more questions for you. I'm watching the time, but
No, you're good.
so speaking of that, being on set and everyone there, I was like really curious because I mean, I don't watch Bake Off shows, like I'm not obsessed with them, but I was curious. A lot of those cakes and like things that the children were making looked very well done, like very real. And I'm like, did somebody make that? Did you guys like cater that in from somewhere? I had to find out like what was the deal with that.
Thank you for saying that. Our production designer, Rebecca Lake, will be very happy for to hear that. She read the script and she's like, I need to make what now? And I was like, yeah, we need these bakes and you up for it? And she actually was, and we had other team members as well help, and really a lot of some of the team members for the for the spring, for the, what was it? The first not the bake off, but the I'm like losing my word. What's the
The third one, like the final competition?
No,
No?
I don't know why my brain just left me. But either way, I'll go back to the main point. Some of the parents actually contributed to a lot of the bakes, but for the challenge ones, those were the ones where we actually had multiple variations of each bake. So it was just, it was a lot. And then of course the cast wanted to eat them and we were like, no, you can't eat them.
Okay, cool. So somebody in your team made them.
Yeah. So all of them were made.
Okay. Wow.
I think there were some that were bought, but for the most part, they were all made. Oh,
Yeah.
that's what I was trying to say. The bake sale. The bake sale is where we had people contribute, and those could have been either bought or made. But yeah, so a mix of them.
Yeah. Well, they looked very, very good, very real and
Yeah.
delicious, obviously, as well.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So one final question. If during this whole process, everything you've learned or just your life so far in your career, if there was like anything that's important to you, like a person, an organization, a cause, an idea, anything that you don't get to talk about very often, is there anything that you would like to mention while we're here?
Yeah, so I'm going to mention one organization that is one of my favorites. Everyone should check out Film Fatales. They are in LA, and they are just absolutely amazing. And being a member from them they're just so helpful and just really great. So I will just say, go check them out. And even if you're not in LA or wherever you are, they have online workshops and stuff that are really good. Online, and they even have online meetups, so you don't necessarily have to be in LA. But I will say, yeah, if whatever area you're in, you really have to like saturate yourself with everything film, and that means becoming members of various film organizations and just getting in the know, because sometimes it is a really small world and you can get projects that way. And I have gotten projects that way also, actually. And so check out Film Fatales, but also know that you need to really saturate yourself with everything film, and that means being a part of various film organizations. So in your area.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, well, thank you so much for being here, for sharing more of your story, as well as a little bit about Brees Bake Off. And yeah, I just wish you all the best in your journey moving forward.
Thank you so, so much, Sarah, for having me. Loved it, and I'm excited to see your film also.
Thank you. Yeah, hopefully in the next couple of months, it'll be done with the editing process.
You got it. You got it.